Now, the peer leading the charge against the government's Rwanda Bill is being accused of hypocrisy. TalkTV discovered he'd taken £300,000 from Azerbaijan while a managing partner at a law firm. Lord Goldsmith, who served as Tony Blair's Attorney General, is opposing the deportation policy, the Rwandan deportation policy, on human rights grounds, despite having accepted cash from the Central Asian country widely criticised for its human rights record.
The difficulty is that the government has already presented a bill to Parliament asking it to make a judgment that Rwanda is safe now. And yet, on the Home Secretary's own evidence, it cannot be so because the measures are not in place and have not been shown to be effective.
Azerbaijani authorities have been accused of arbitrary arrests, indefinite detentions, severe beatings, torture and forced disappearances. Lord Goldsmith has also represented Bank Sberbank, which was sanctioned by the UK and US after Putin's invasion of Ukraine. In 2021, Goldsmith took a leave of absence from the laws before transparency rules came in, meaning he didn't have to register any earnings from abroad. TalkTV has contacted Lord Goldsmith for a comment, but he has yet to respond. Now, obviously, I'm a member of a trade union called the House of Lords. Lord Goldsmith and I are both members of the House of Lords. I can see why people would want to question the fact that as a lawyer, he clearly represented the Azerbaijani government, it looks like, and received fees. We have to be careful when you're talking about the Russian bank. There was a lawyer who was criticised recently for representing a Russian bank, and it turned out he'd actually represented effectively the UK entity when it was hived off from the Russian bank because of sanctions. So we don't know the full facts behind that. It is obviously a awkward position, and lawyers are often in this position. You've seen what's happened with Keir Starmer, for example, being accused of representing terrorists when he was a defence lawyer. Lord Goldsmith would probably say, well, you know, everyone is entitled to representation. They can come to our law firm and ask us to represent them. But of course, a solicitor, which he is, as opposed to a barrister, can turn down clients. As a lawyer, you don't have to represent a client. As a barrister, the cab rank rule means you do. If somebody asks you to represent,
but would it happen at that level, though, Ed? You know, would he really have no choice in that scenario?
No, I'm saying he could have turned down.
He could have turned it down.
Government because he was a solicitor. So that is it's an awkward question for him. If he's going to position himself as opposing the Rwandan bill, not because it's impractical or there are other things the government could do, but because of Rwanda's human rights record, it is, I think, justified to say, well, if that is your position, why did you represent the Azerbaijani government?
I was thinking about this. He's the Gary Lineker of the House of Lords, this fella. That's how it's transposing to me. Because in the same way that Lineker was like, you know, it's terrible the human rights that are going on in, you know, in the Middle East, in Qatar, etc. But I'm going to go there anyway and do the World Cup, which I'll be paid handsomely for. If you really want to be consistent with your values and your moral, ethical code, etc., what is intrinsically valuable to your mindset and your sense of right and wrong.
Gary Lineker should have said, "I'm so opposed to
correct. I'm not
going to cover it."
And Lord Goldie should have said, in a similar vein, look, you know, if you look at Azerbaijan, you haven't got to know much. I think I learned about it when I was about 14, what horrors go on out there and still go on out there. I just sense that you would have certainly, firstly, you wouldn't go anywhere near it. And secondly, when it came to this vote yesterday, you were there, Ed, of course, you voted. He made his speech. He would have sat in his office. Wouldn't he have, at some point, scratched his head and gone, I wonder if the old Azerbaijan thing will come up. I mean, that might just sort of somehow sour the authenticity of what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. All I see here is a person who's been doing his job. He's got some clients who people don't agree with, and now he's going to be hauled over the coals through it. This is what Azerbaijani authorities accused of arbitrary arrests, indefinite detentions, severe beatings, torture, forced disappearances. Those things I could levy at America, United States of America. I could levy those.
Not really.
Yeah, I could.
Azerbaijan and America are one of the same.
But these few things...
there was a prison.
These few things I could levy against Guantanamo Bay. I could levy against Saudi Arabia. I could levy against Qatar.
But that is a fair point, JJ, if you're not then standing up in the chamber of the House of Lords and saying, we can't send people to Rwanda because of Rwanda's human rights.
So when Prince Charles took money from the Qataris for his charities, should we be saying Prince Charles can't do any good now because he's taking money from a place that's been deranged?
Azerbaijan is a deeply, deeply corrupt place, and I don't know...
I think America is. I think America is too.
There is no democracy there at all. Do you know how much the Azerbaijanis are accused of bribing politicians? And this is where I think Goldsmith's position really gets tricky. We don't know who he was given this money by. If it turns out it's from the Aliyevs, who are the ruling family, they are accused of bribing to the tune of $3 billion foreign politicians to go easy on them over the last few years. I mean, the son of the president, I think we've now got the son of the original ruler, and his son has just spent $9 million in casinos over the last few years. These people, the Azerbaijanis themselves are living a very, very hard life, and the political classes are deeply corrupt. This is not somebody you want on your CV if you're a lawyer.
I'm sorry,
Unless
Saudi Arabia spending billions of pounds on weapons that we give to them so they can bomb Yemen, and we're talking about bribes. Just because it's a bribe, for me, it's the same business.
It's all bad.
You can paint it any way you want.
I completely agree. I don't think we can play degrees of badness here to show our moral superiority. At the end of the day, there are very few countries that have a clean record. I think the bigger issue here is what the House of Lords has devolved into. I mean, it's basically an unelected nursing home. Because for people that are not convinced of actually the benefits of the House of Lords, and I'm, by the way, not one of them, because I do think it should be reformed. I don't think it should be abolished. You have these people that have proximity to power that inevitably benefit from it in one way or another, and that's the bigger issue here. I think these people, there are no checks and balances, really, and I think that the status that they're given in our society, that really needs to change. I don't think this
I want you in the House of Lords. In fact, the House of Lords, they wear red ermine, and look at you are almost in ermine. And also, what I want is Esther Fat Balloon in the House of Lords. You'd be wandering down the corridor saying, "Get out of the way! I've got to go to a meeting." What do you mean you've got a Zimmer frame? What do you mean you're in a wheelchair? Get up! Get out of the way!
I'm saying, listen.
You are right. You are right.
We should be holding people to certain
There's a telling
standards.
statistic about the House of Lords that if you introduce a retirement age of 75, the numbers would reduce by a third. That's 250.
Well, what should we do about it, Ed?
Well, God, I could be so boring about this. There is no way to change the House of Lords as it is. You either abolish it or you incrementally reform it. You can't have an elected chamber, this chamber, because no one will ever agree on the alternative. You could do really boring reforms. You could have no hereditary peers, no bishops, retirement age at 75, term limits, you only serve 15 years, a cap on the numbers, so prime ministers can't appoint 20 peers overnight if there's not 20 vacancies. You could make it much more workable and acceptable. It does, I'm obviously biased, do a very good job. The peers who do the work do scrutinise the legislation. Yeah. What you will never get is somebody coming up with an alternative. This is the new House of Lords, partly elected, represented from different parts of the country, because no one will ever agree on the alternative.
And where else would you get Ed Vaizey, Alan Sugar and Floella Benjamin in the same room?
Exactly.
So there you go. Every cloud.
Floella Benjamin is a national treasure.
Totally.
Do you know the Queen's last act was to give her the Order of Merit?
Is that right?
Really?
Companion of Honour, or something like that, one of those.
Well, that's quite something, isn't it?
Isn't that amazing?
Didn't think that when she was monkeying around with Hamble on Play School those years ago.